Everyone, today I've got a very special guest. It's Dr. Laura Hayes. She's a physician and she has worked in the emergency department for years. And today she's going to be talking with us about how to manage burnout. And I love her approach because it's very science informed, but it's also very body aware. So Dr. Laura Hayes has worked in the emergency department for decades, and she also teaches yoga, and she's the host of the podcast Lasting Impact Wellness. So they've got a bunch of really great resources there. I'm really excited to hear what she has to say today about burnout, how we can heal that. And so let's jump in. Let's go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for joining us. I'm super excited to talk with you today about burnout and stress and everything.
Thanks, Emma. I'm really happy to be here and talk with you too.
Yeah. And I think your experience as an emergency room physician is going to be so informative because, am I right in understanding like ER doctors and police probably have some of the like highest rates of burnout out of all professions?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, like just to start out, like what is burnout for those who are maybe unfamiliar with the term, or how would you define burnout? What is it?
So, good question. A lot of my understanding of burnout came from, of course, personal experience being in the emergency department, but also recognizing how my body and my mind were responding to these high stress situations. So, I actually started researching it and reading books about it, trying to really understand it more for myself, but then also when I was in a leadership role, kind of trying to understand it for my team as well to try to help guide them. And burnout has been studied for decades. I'm sure you know this, Emma, but they really started focusing on it back in the 70s. And there was this I think his name was Freudenberger in the 70s. And he did a lot of his research on workplace burnout. And a lot of what we know about burnout has come from that research on occupational burnout specifically. But throughout recent years, maybe the last 5 to 10 years or so, people are starting to look at burnout in these other arenas. So, particularly parental or caregiver burnout, we're starting to see some research being done there. And I wouldn't be surprised if even more research comes out in different arenas since the pandemic, because that highlighted a lot of different type of stress for all of us, essentially. But when you think about what burnout really represents, and that is if you think of the actual WHO definition, which they define it as a syndrome of chronic stress that hasn't been successfully managed. So if you think of it just in a basic form like that, then you can see how easily you could extrapolate it to a number of your life scenarios, so to speak. So that's kind of the definition of burnout that's accepted now. Again, originally started with workplace, but I think as we talk about it more, a lot of people listening will think, oh, well, yeah, I feel that too, not necessarily at work or maybe in my personal life too. So it's really composed of these three main components. And the first is emotional exhaustion. I think of that as the feeling of it kind of makes sense. Like you feel like I'm spent. I am completely maxed out. Like my light is so dim right now that I can barely see it. That kind of, I like to use the term soul sucked. Like you feel like something is just totally sucking your soul. That's that feeling of emotional burnout. Like you have nothing left to give.
Yeah.
And then the second part of it, their second component is this depersonalization. And I think of that really as just a disconnection. You're disengaged from what your main roles or your primary job is. Maybe you don't feel personally invested in what you're doing anymore, even though you once did. And this shows up a lot, at least for me it did, but for a lot of people as you're just going through the motions. You're checking the boxes that need to be checked. And maybe you're even just showing up for the paycheck, honestly. But it's that attitude of like, I'm just done with this place. And, you start to see in teams who experience this or groups or organizations, especially at the workplaces, they lose that kind of team player attitude where they're part of the team technically, but they don't really even want to be anymore. It's kind of, this is the component that I think any manager or boss would just not want to hear from his or her employees, that disengagement. So then the third one is this reduced like personal accomplishment. So that feeling that no matter what you do, you are not affecting any change. Like you're busting your butt, but you feel like nothing's changing, nothing's improving. I used to use the term when I was during COVID and in my leadership role, I would say to my husband, I feel like I'm just banging my head against the wall. I'm saying the
Yeah.
same stuff over and over again, and it feels like nobody is listening.
Hmm.
So again, those are kind of the main three accepted components of burnout. So emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and then that feeling of decreased personal accomplishment or effectiveness. And
Yeah. That's so interesting. I'm already learning so much. I'm really not an expert in burnout. I have my own theories and approaches to it. But as you talk about that, that makes a lot of sense. And that third one, I think there's a lot of overlap between trauma and depression and burnout. And that third one, where you start to feel like, why try? Like, what's the point? I keep putting effort in and I'm not seeing any outcome. Or if you do see an outcome, maybe it doesn't even feel good. Like you have some big success and you're like, cool, whatever, And
yeah.
that's like closely overlaps with both like nervous system hypoarousal with trauma and that feeling of depression where you just can't get excited about anything anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, sometimes even noticing again that soul-sucking feeling of
Yeah.
just that dread factor of having to get up and go do, again, in the context of work, but that dread factor of oh my God, I'm dreading going to work today. Even if, years before you really found a passion and a purpose in what you were doing,
Yeah.
those are the little signals and the signs that, hey, maybe there's something here to look into or be aware of. It almost feels like that's not who I am, and
Hmm.
why would I feel that way? I used to love doing what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh, interesting. And I wasn't aware of kind of the depersonalization aspect of it, like just going through the motions. I hadn't thought of that as like a little bit of dissociation, a little bit of like separation from your sense of self and your sense of purpose. And again, that's another like I see things through a lot of times through trauma-informed lens, and that's, trauma can be a form of chronic stress. It's just interesting to see this overlap with the chronic stress. So that leads me to wonder about like how does chronic stress cause this psychological state? I mean, it's a mind-body state. It really
Mhm.
is. But like, what's going on in the body? What's the body aspect of this, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, well, I think you're correct in saying it's a mind-body state. I mean, the two are not, they can't be separated. They are
There is no
constantly, there
separation.
is no
It's not a
separation.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And and also just before, I guess before I touch on that, these components of burnout, they're kind of a continuum, right? You can have all three components. You can have more of one, less of the other. You might fluctuate between the three components. So by no means is it a strict definition. It's really, there's some gray area there, but it's more of a
Sure.
general concept. But yeah, your mind and body are in constant communication with one another. And I think how burnout shows up is really in the form of chronic stress, as the definition says, chronic stress that has not been managed successfully. So, what does that look like? Well, at the physiologic level, that looks like your sympathetic drive that is on all the time. So, I know you know this part, but I'll review it for listeners if it's helpful in
Please.
this context. So,
Yeah.
your body or mind senses a threat, and that is usually from one of your senses, your ears, your eyes, your anything around you. Your body senses this threat. It's happening automatically. And then that
And that could
senses
be anything from someone yelling at you to seeing a life or death situation in the emergency department or an email that says you have more work to do, right? All
totally.
of
It's
those
just
could be like,
exactly
yeah.
all of those could be a threat. Something that is triggering you, a trigger from
Yeah.
any context.
Hmm.
And, that gets processed through the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that processes emotion. And then the amygdala interprets what it's sensing and what's coming into it. And if it interprets it as a threat, then it's going to send signals to other parts of your brain, specifically the hypothalamus. And then the hypothalamus is going to start this cascade of neurotransmitters release that goes out through the autonomic nervous system, telling your body to start preparing itself for this threat and basically kicking it into action in order to protect you. And you get signals sent to the adrenal glands, which primarily in stress, when we talk about the stress response, we're talking about adrenaline and cortisol, with
Yeah.
adrenaline being kind of the first immediate hormone that is produced and starts making physiologic changes to your body. So, speeding up your heart rate, constricting certain blood vessels while dilating others. So, really just preparing your body to do something, preparing you for action to overcome that threat. And then once your body senses that that threat is still present and is still there, and you need to stay in this mode of action or doing something, that's when the cortisol release starts to happen, which again has all kinds of effects on your body. Similarly, in protection mode, but it's really designed to help you move, help you do something, help you stay in action. So when we think about acute stress, we just take that picture of that process happening acutely. It's fine. It's doing what it's supposed to do. There's nothing wrong with that process. And
Yeah.
I like to tell people, it can be helpful at times. That's what helps you get out of bed in the morning. It's what
Hmm.
helps you put one foot in front of the other when you're a little frightened to do something or get out on stage or give a presentation or ask somebody on a first date. It's that sympathetic drive that's pushing you, that acute stress. So that's good and that's not bad for us. But it's when that cycle is not dampened down or it's not settled ever and it stays constantly running in the background pretty much at all times. That's what
Yeah.
leads to chronic stress. And then that's what becomes detrimental to our physical bodies and all our mind as well. And then that's where that burnout comes in. It's this chronic stress or this even low level heightened response, if you will, in the sympathetic system that never goes away.
Mm.
And when you are dealing with that, even if you're not realizing it, which a lot of us don't, that's when those components of burnout can start to become a little bit more obvious. And
Yeah, for sure.
and I think, we can think about these formal definitions of burnout and they're helpful for sure. But a lot of times in reality, burnout and chronic stress are going to show up for people as changes in their mood, irritability. That was a big one for me. I found that again, especially going through COVID, when in the very beginning, when things
Mm.
were really, really hard, and we didn't. I mean, my husband and I reminisce now, thinking back on how we would, you'd have to change out of your scrubs, shower at the hospital, put your scrubs in a bag. I mean, we were so terrified of this, and during those really heightened times, I was very irritable. And I did not recognize that as a sign of stress or burnout for me, but I was much more short tempered, more
Hmm.
emotionally labile. I
Hmm.
would kind of snap at my kids a little bit more than I normally would and have a lot more guilt and shame around that too. Uh,
Right.
and so
Yeah,
that
I
shows
get
up for a
that.
lot of people for sure. And then I think too, like these self-sabotaging behaviors that we get into, where we don't stop and realize what's going on, but maybe we go from drinking one glass of wine every couple nights to having a glass of wine or two every night when we get home from work just to decompress, or
Hmm.
or you're just craving different things, or you're binging on things that taste good or feel good in the moment, but then they make your stomach hurt later, give you the runs in an hour, but
Right.
it's sort
Yeah.
of like you kind of ignore those things. But again, I bring that up to say that those can be your signs of burnout if you're starting to see those things.
Totally. Yeah. One of the first things I notice when I start to get stressed is, yeah, changing my eating. And I just started learning about how the cortisol release actually triggers, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm not a doctor. Insulin. It triggers insulin. So your body can mobilize blood sugar, which makes your blood sugar drop, which makes you crave more sugar, which makes you like get on this like roller coaster of like blood sugar, basically. Is that right?
Yeah, that's basically right. And that's why, these chronic states of high cortisol can lead to weight
Diabetes.
gain, diabetes,
Hmm.
exactly, metabolic syndrome.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, this is kind of a side comment, but when
I
you think
like
about
side
people,
comments.
who work night shifts, or
Yeah.
parents who are up all night with their kids, their little
Yeah.
kids, and then your sleep gets all messed up and your cortisol levels are fluctuating in a very different way than if you're on a normal day night schedule.
Right.
So then you start to realize, like, wow, why am I like I'm so hungry all day? I'm so
Yeah, I
hungry, and
just want to eat
I
all
just want to
day
eat
just
all.
to get a little bit of
Yes,
energy or something. Yeah.
exactly. And you start craving different things and you're wanting sugar and more sugar. And that's when, people start to see a little bit more belly bloat or they might put on weight. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, again, as just an aside, and I saw that in myself when I was in different phases of my career where I was working more night shifts, for example, or
Totally.
again, having little babies where I was up most of the night
Ooh,
and messing that up. I know. Yes, you're
Sounds exhausting. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just tired, like just managing my kids, but I don't work nights. And I think, the other thing, I just find all this stuff really interesting, but the circadian rhythm has a direct interaction with your cortisol levels. So
Mhm.
there's this cortisol awakening response that comes usually in the mornings, but if you're working night shift, it's going to be like your body's just like boink, 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 like all
Exactly.
over the place.
Exactly. It just adds another additional component to all of this. Yes.
Seriously,
Yeah.
seriously. So okay, so people who are experiencing burnout, they're going to see a lot of stuff going on in their bodies, and you just described like, yeah, more lability, more irritability, maybe more cravings, maybe more unhealthy coping strategies, and I would imagine also people feeling tired, like emotionally tired or physically tired or having a hard time sleeping or sleeping too much. I mean, like just a lot of these physical symptoms, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the sleep thing comes in a lot too, where, a lot of people struggle with they lie down at night to go to sleep, and that's when the racing thoughts in the mind starts to work. And
Yeah.
for a lot of us, that's because that is the first time all day that you have
Hmm.
stopped, that the
Right.
physical activity has ceased for the day. You're
Hmm.
not managing physically the things around you, and you're finally lying there. Your body is still, but your
Hmm.
mind is now your mind. I think I describe it like a little hamster on a wheel. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
as soon as you lie down, the hamster wakes up, perks up, its little ears perk up, and it's like, I'm ready to run. And it just
Yeah.
runs over and over again on that wheel. And there's a lot to be learned from that. And that definitely happens with chronic stress and burnout, where you are so physically and emotionally exhausted, but then you lie down to go to sleep at night and you can't sleep because your mind won't stop, it won't rest.
Yeah.
And, and in that lies the practice of being more mindful during the day, or making time to pause, take those moments where you can actually give your body some physical rest, let your emotions settle down, sit with your mind, let that little hamster run just a little bit, so
Yeah.
that so that when you
It
lie down
doesn't
at
keep
night, it's
piling up.
exactly, it's not just
Yeah.
saving it all up for later. Yeah.
Well, and I think I'm really interested to talk more about this. I think as we look at our body, sometimes we think, well, I've got to kind of go to war against my body because my body's all stressed out at night, and that's bad, and I need to make my body be quiet. And it's like, actually, if you look at this, like the reason, like you described, that hamster turns on, our body and our mind have a natural ability and desire to resolve stress. Like we're built to get that sympathetic activation and then to relax. We have a parasympathetic response.
Mhm.
But if we stay in the alert or activated state all day, all day, all day, our body is just like trying to like, okay, can I turn on that? Like, let's process these emotions. Let's process these thoughts. Let's process these body chemicals. And it's like, no, I'm staying busy, 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 busy. Okay, I'm laying down, and your body is like, okay, I guess now's the time. I guess now's my chance to like process through these emotions and turn on that response. But first, we have to process through them.
Right. And that's the key. And
Yeah.
and the people who are listening and they're thinking, well, I actually fall asleep pretty well. But then I wake up at 2 in the morning, and that's when my hamster starts.
That's me.
Yeah. Yes,
I can
yes.
fall asleep great, but 3 to 5, that's a tricky time for me.
Right. And sleep is a very nuanced conversation, but that for
Yeah,
a lot of people, that is part of it. It's they're not completing the stress cycle before they're lying down to go to bed. And I don't know if you've read the book Burnout. There's one of many, but it's by the Nagoski twins, and
I haven't.
um I may even be butchering their name. It's Emily Nagoski and her twin sister. I can't think of her name right now, but
Okay.
the book's called Burnout. It's a great book, and I highly recommend it. But they talk through this concept of completing the stress cycle, and
Yes.
how, as you just mentioned, like just because your body's tired and it's a certain time at night where you're ready to go to bed physically, it doesn't mean that your insides have completed that stress cycle. And so how do you do that? Well, it's hard. It's hard to
Hmm.
do that. But I think some of the things we mentioned, of being more mindful, taking pauses throughout your day, doing some check-ins with yourself, taking inventory, and I'm happy to talk a little more on that. That's kind of my little golden tool.
Yeah.
But then also having ways to complete the cycle. So you get home from work and you maybe engage in some physical activity. You get some of that, you kind of let that sympathetic drive finish out.
Hmm.
You have some release for it. Maybe you go for a walk, or you get outside in nature, or you come
Hmm.
home and you hug your partner, or you hug your kids, or you call someone and you have an emotional or social connection with someone. Those are things that can kind of trigger the parasympathetic to start turning on and telling your body, okay, I'm in a safe place. I'm home and I can start settling down, and okay, sympathetic drive, you can start to turn off now. And then,
Totally.
yeah, and then certainly breathing and things like that we can talk more about are big.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. And one of the things I want to highlight for the listeners is I think a lot of people think when they think of chronic stress, they think, I need a vacation. That's what they think they need. And while vacations can be helpful and like getting a perspective can be helpful. You laughed a little bit. I want to hear what you have to say before I say my part. Go for it.
No, I was just thinking I would never turn down a vacation, but
Right. But
but of course, I mean it's sort of, I mean, if you're not processing or managing the stressors,
yeah.
then the stress can be mitigated a little bit, but it's not going to go away. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
when you think about the stressors versus the stress, so the thing that's stressing you out versus the response in your body that you're having to it. Going on vacation can make the stressors go away for a little bit, but that stress is still working through you. And most of the time when we go on vacation, when we come back, you maybe can gain some different perspectives. And I think there's if you do vacation well, and you practice
Yeah.
some of these other coping mechanisms, then great, you may come back and have a different mindset. But that's why I laughed, because I thought, oh, vacation, never turn it down, but it does not solve all, that's for sure. Yeah.
That's the thing that's really important. So if I were to think about this, right, it's like what I love about what I hear you describing is you're talking about a sustainable approach to managing the stress response in your body, day to day, moment to moment. And when people think of a vacation, it's like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be stressed out and tight for the next 4 months. And then I'm going to take 2 weeks off. And then I'm going to be stressed out and tight for the next 4 months. And it's like, if we looked at like physical health that way, that'd be like, I'm going to sit on the couch and eat potato chips for 4 months. And then I'm going to go to the gym for 2 weeks. And then I'm going to sit on the couch and eat potato chips for 4 months. And then I'm going to go to the gym for 2 weeks. And they're like, why aren't I healthy? I do 600 workouts in 2 weeks. It's like, well,
Exactly.
like that's just not how it works. So when I imagine chronic stress and burnout, I think of someone being in the, like, I'm visualizing like if you're in this like safety state and you're in this parasympathetic state, and then you get activated during the day and you just stay activated all day, and then you go home and it's like this cliff and you're not really like processing through, then you're just kind of doing this cliff thing where you're stuck in the activated state all the time. And it sounds like what you're describing is like, okay, let's practice regulation throughout the day, like nervous system regulation throughout the day to manage chronic stress instead of like escape.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, chronic stress doesn't have to be a major life stressor. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, those happen.
Right.
People lose their jobs, they get divorced, people die, tragedies happen. You get
Yeah.
sick, your kids get sick. All of these things that seem obvious, but the majority of us dealing with chronic stress, it's more indolent than that. It's those hidden stressors. It's the never-ending to-do lists. It's
Oh
the
yeah.
mental load that we bring to bed with us every single night. It's
Mm-hmm.
the managing maybe a sick family member, or getting older and realizing that now you have to start worrying about your parents as well as your kids. It's all of these little things that we feel like we're managing well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we are to some degree, but I think that's where you have to just be a little cautious of saying, well, I feel like I'm managing it well, but actually, I don't really sleep that great. Or actually, I'm waking up at 2 in the morning every single night. Or, again,
Mm-hmm.
kind of recognizing it. And to me, that all starts with being a little more self-aware and valuing yourself enough to say, I'm going to get to know me, and I need to be able to start to recognize my own triggers. I need to recognize my own body's warning signs and signals
Yeah.
that it's sending me. And then you can start to take on some of these practices on how do you get, like you said, how do you get down from this
Mm-hmm.
high that you've had in your nervous system, all day or all week or all month or all year.
Yeah.
Um,
So how would you describe that? Like if we were talking about it, and I wish we had like hours and hours to talk about this, but If you were to coach someone, an emergency physician, or someone who just has a stressful job, or a mom whose kids like are always needing her and she's afraid they're gonna get run over in the street in front of her, and they're like, you're constantly like, I gotta make dinner and I gotta do all these things, and it just feels like this chronic stress. How would you coach them? Like, what would be the steps you'd encourage them to do, or the practical actions you would encourage them to take day to day, moment to moment, to help manage that chronic stress?
Yeah, so good question. I think the first thing is recognizing that this is not something wrong with you. It's
Mhm.
not a problem. It's not something that's off with you. I mean, especially when we think about burnout, there's some personal component to that, but a lot of burnout really stems from systematic issues and
Also true.
systemic issues, I should say. But, issues within the workplace, issues with all of the, again, mental load stuff that you're managing and dealing with throughout the day. So I would
Yeah.
say that's first, is recognizing, look, there's not something wrong with you, but
Hmm.
let's figure out how to help you get through this. And again, knowing that you're not alone too. I think it can feel really isolating, especially when you're going through chronic stress. You can consciously acknowledge that other people deal with stuff, but it's really hard to see beyond your own stuff when you're really in the thick of things, especially when you're in that really in a state of burnout. You really do feel very isolated and alone.
Yeah.
So I think for coaching somebody or advising someone, and what I would tell my partners or colleagues is recognize and remind yourself that there are things that you can control. When you get to this point of chronic stress or burnout, you may feel like you have lost control of everything. And as humans, we like to be in control. And so reminding ourselves, what can we control? We can control our breath. We can stop, take a pause, and we can use our breath to our advantage. We can control our movement. We can choose to move our bodies. We can choose to incorporate functional fitness or physical activity into our day. We can choose what we put into our body and into our mind. So sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but we can control what we're saying to ourselves, our negative self talk, all of that stuff, our mindset.
Yeah.
And I, first and foremost, you have the ability to just pause and then choose your response to any situation. And that's
Yeah.
really where that mind body connection comes in this mindfulness work. And um, again, it's for me, it's probably just starts with taking a pause.
Hmm.
We have this podcast episode that we did on our podcast. I think it's in our self-awareness episode, where I tell the listeners to stop for 30 seconds, no matter what they're doing. Even if they're driving, just keep driving, but just stop for 30 seconds and just
Hmm.
breathe and just notice what comes up in your body. That's a typical mindfulness practice, and that's a great place to start. And if you have a hard time just sitting with yourself for 30 seconds, that's okay. It's not bad, but that's probably a sign that you might benefit from doing that a little bit more often.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's a great place to start, is just
Hmm.
stopping, pausing,
Yeah.
taking a breath. And then from there, you can increase that 30 seconds to a minute or 5 minutes. And, these breathing practices don't have to look like formal meditation, or, um, you know, they don't have to happen at a certain time of day. It just gives you a moment to stop and then tap into your physical body and what your mind's doing at that time, and start building that connection so that you can manipulate it to your advantage. These things happen automatically, like we discussed earlier, but
Yeah.
you can influence them for sure by things like breathing and movement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it makes, like, if you look at the kind of the allostatic load, like basically the total amount of stress that someone carries the whole day, if instead they go and they get a little activated, something stressful at work, and then they breathe and they slow down, then they're down here for a little bit. And then they maybe climb back up and breathe and slow down and they're down here. But you look at the like this sum amount of stress under that chart. I'm imagining this line graph here in my head. There's like a lot lower, like less minutes stressed during the day. Like your body is less stressed out and it gets a chance to process, or it gets a chance to move some of that cortisol out of your system, right?
Right. And it's a practice. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you wouldn't go out and expect to hit a home run at the World Series if you've never swung a bat in your life. So,
Right.
and as humans, we tend to be harsh on ourselves. And if we don't get it right the first time, we think we're a failure. But so this is where some grace and self-compassion can come in as well. But practicing these things takes time. And the more you practice, the more you'll really reap the benefits and start to feel different. I mean, these things work. There is some scientific basis behind
Yeah.
breathing and deep breathing and doing some parasympathetic stimulation. And I mean, that's real stuff. You just have to
Hmm.
allow yourself the time and space to do it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm absolutely positive of that. And our parasympathetic response can be strengthened. Like our ability to get activated can get strengthened, especially if we get stressed out all the time. We get really good at getting stressed out. But the more you practice that parasympathetic response, the stronger that parasympathetic muscle basically. It can activate that vagal tone. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, when I think about when I feel that real rush of adrenaline, particularly at work, if I have somebody coming in and it's a really difficult case and I'm aware of it, I've heard the medic radio chime in and let's say it's a pediatric cardiac arrest, something that's really stressful.
yeah.
Then I know as I'm prepping the room and my team's coming in and we've got all the necessary people there, I can feel it's a natural response. Like we said, my body, my insides start to rev up. My heart rate goes up. I get goosebumps. I get a little gurgle in my stomach and I start breathing a little faster. But I have learned that I have to control that. I have learned that throughout my career because if I can't control that in that moment, if I can't call upon the tools that I've practiced that I can use to slow it down, then I'm
Yeah.
not going to be effective. I won't be able to communicate with my team and I ultimately won't do the right thing for that patient. So just to the point of practice. So I practice my breathing, I practice my mindfulness. I mean, as you know, I'm a yoga instructor, so that's been a big part of what has helped me get through those stressful times. And that's an extreme example, but I can tell you that I've practiced long enough now. I don't get it perfect every time, but I've practiced it long enough now where I can abort it pretty much immediately.
Well,
And but then I have to let it go somewhere after,
yeah.
and that's kind of that finishing that stress cycle like we talked about. So, there needs to be an outlet for it later, but I can control my breath at that time to bring myself down, which is great.
Yeah. It sounds, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think of myself as a mother and seeing situations like that. And it's like, wow, my heart like is so sensitive too as a mom that it's hard to manage those emotions. Would you consider like your response as you described doing that? I'm just curious, would you describe that as kind of like um white knuckling it or gritting your way through it? Or would you describe that as regulating your way through it? Or is it a little bit of both with an ER situation?
Um, Truly, I think it's regulating, but
Yeah.
again, I think that takes time and it's a learned response.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in the beginning, it was more white knuckling and trying to get through it and trying to tell yourself, just be focused.
Like
Whereas,
compartmentalize, put that in a
exactly,
box and put it into the,
exactly,
the storeroom with more boxes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and over time, I think it is more self-regulating, and again, just that just comes with practice. Now, there's definitely still some compartmentalizing that
Of
goes on
course.
because there's a lot of emotion that comes with those types of cases, of course. But
Yep.
um,
Yep.
but I but I think that speaks again as I said it out loud. I think well, that's really speaks to the practice of it because it changes over a career, over years of having to be in that situation, and yeah, it seems very more regulated to me now than it does to be just a grin and bear it
Yeah.
type of reaction. Yeah. More
I
of a
really,
controlled response, if that makes
mhm.
sense, as opposed to a reaction.
I really appreciate you taking like, yeah, exploring that because I think there are a lot of people who can like get through stressful situations, but not in a sustainable way. And what you're describing is a sustainable approach to regulating your body in the middle of a stressful situation. You're not escaping the situation and you're not avoiding it in your mind. You're not just stuffing and suppressing those emotions. You're regulating through those emotions. And of course, with these big situations, you've got to unpack them sometimes later. You got to
Hmm.
debrief them and work through them and process them, I'm sure.
Yeah,
That's really
for sure.
cool. Really, really appreciate that. Do you have any other like tips or suggestions on how people? So the first thing I noticed, you said you got to be aware. You got to stop distracting yourself and being so busy all the time. You got to be aware of what's going on in your body. Second thing would be take a breath, be mindful, be present. Anything else you'd recommend to like help turn on that parasympathetic state or that sense of calm?
Yeah. So for that specifically, some things that we talked about already, but that emotional connection. So hugging people, hugging your,
Mm.
especially if you're a parent, sometimes that I tell my daughters, sometimes when I hug them, I'll say out loud to them, this is the best feeling I've had all day. Cause it really, it does something, it creates hormonal shifts within your body and it
Yeah.
really fills you up and it really does activate that parasympathetic. So, finding an emotional connection or social interaction, certainly, as we mentioned, physical movements. The other thing that I do that's kind of a simple practice that I recommend to people, and people can try it or not, it's I used the term earlier, take inventory. So
Oh
I'm glad
yeah,
we could
yeah.
kind of come back to that. So it's something that my husband and I, a practice that we got into over, again, the last few years when we started recognizing, hey, we're feeling a bit burned out or a lot burned out. And how can we start gaining control over our lives again and over what's going on in our world and our place in the world around us? And so we use this term take inventory, and it's really just taking a moment to assess your short-term situation, your kind of midterm situation, and your long-term. So what I mean by that is, take a moment throughout your day where you short term, okay, how does my body feel right now? And that's that mindfulness piece. It's sitting, pausing for 30 seconds and saying, how do I feel? Like, are my shoulders up to my ears? Okay, if they
Yeah,
are, can
that's
I
me.
just me too? Can I just pull them down a little bit, or
Yeah.
exactly, or if I'm super slouchy, like sit up tall. Let's just, and again, without judgment, it's just, let's just see what's going on physically.
Hmm.
And then in that moment, you can start being more mindful and a little more present. And then you move into that sort of midterm inventory, which is, okay, now that I'm here, now that I'm present for this moment, I've checked in, like, what's stressing me out right now? Like, what's, and it's not about adding more tasks or running through your to-do list. It's, all right, what am I feeling right now, and if I'm feeling stressed, like what's the primary cause of that right now, or what's currently sucking my soul? What's the thing? And then the longer term is, okay, now what do I need to do to deal with that? Like, what do I really want, and what small changes can I start making right now that are going to have the greatest impact? And
Mm.
and I say it sort of flippantly, is this sort of taking inventory, but it's really just about stopping, pausing, noticing how you feel, noticing what's showing up for you, and then doing like a check-in. Okay, what's stressing me out? What's sucking my soul? All right, now that I've identified that, what are some steps I need to take to just make this a little more manageable? How can I engineer my life a little bit differently
Yeah.
today so that it's more manageable? And a lot of people listening, and I talk to patients all the time about all kinds of things, and people and friends and myself, I'm sure, have been guilty of thinking or saying this. They feel like, well, I don't have a few minutes to pause. I'm so freaking busy that I do not have that time. And to that, I say, we all can take a pause. Like, I don't accept that answer. I don't accept it for
Yeah.
myself. I just, even in those moments, and again, I talk about this in one of the podcast episodes about these stressful moments of being in the ED. Like, you can always take 5 or 10 seconds to pause. You can take 5 or 10 seconds to get yourself together, to take a breath, to check in, and to
Hmm.
decide and choose your next move. And do it when you're in the bathroom. The bathroom is probably the one place of solace that we all can find in our busy day. Now, as a parent, we all know sometimes you cannot even get to the bathroom
That's
without being
true.
disturbed.
Yeah.
However, it sort of is the one place, though, where if you even lock the door, people kind of understand. Oh, all right, well, she's going to the bathroom, and they just give you
Yeah.
like 5 or 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
instead of bringing your phone to the bathroom, which is what the majority of us do,
Right.
you're like, oh, I got 5 minutes. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to check my email. I'm going to look on social media. You're in that autopilot mode. But
Go, go,
next
go.
time,
Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
next time, maybe don't do that. And while you're sitting on the toilet or even after when you're washing your hands, like look in the mirror and just take a moment to just take inventory. Just
Mhm.
a minute, 2 minutes, and you'll
Yeah.
start, if you feel different when you do it. It's just getting yourself to get into that habit and that practice of doing these things. Yeah.
Mm, I really like that. I can see how that could be applied in so many levels. Like as a mom, I think about some of the area I've been kind of working on right now with my family is the car. Like when we're in the car, I've got 4 kids. There is often like messes and fighting and yelling, and people can't get their seatbelts on, and other people are unclicking their seatbelts, and I'm like, stop it! And I like just my initial reaction is to like yell or do something because I'm like driving and I can't get my hands on them. And so if I were to think of your inventory, it'd be like, okay, in the moment, I'm gonna like slow myself down. It's not an emergency. I can breathe. And then in the midterm, I'd be like, okay, we're going to stop the car until everyone has their seatbelt on, or until you guys stop hitting each other, or until we solve this problem amicably. And then the long term, this is the area that I haven't quite gotten to, but it's like the next thing on my list is like, okay, we're going to have like family evenings where we sit and talk about car rules, and we're going to educate the kids, and we're going to print up car rules and tape them on the seats. And every time, like, we're going to do a star chart, and we're going to, so like creating a system to prevent like the long-term problems that we're having. And I like this idea of like taking inventory. Like short-term, I can't make a new like rules list for the car. I've just got to breathe.
Exactly.
Midterm, we've got to get to where we're getting. Can we do it calmly? And long-term, can we make a system that's going to be sustainable for our family to drive places?
That's perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. That's really helpful. So that's really cool.
Great. I'm sure I can relate to your example too, for sure. The chaos, the constant chaos of trying to herd cats, which is moving your children and trying to get them to do anything. Yes.
Yeah. My 4-year-old's line lately is, I'm too tired to buckle myself. And I'm like, no, like just do it. Like you can do it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Like, I'm so, like, it's so interesting to hear your experiences and to learn from you. And I feel like you have so much good stuff to share. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today and share that with my audience. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was great. I was telling you before we started recording, I think that I love these types of connections and, you know, just getting to meet and talk to all kinds of people. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Good for your well-being. Social connection. We're doing it right now.
Yeah.
Perfect practice.
Yeah. Totally. Okay. And then just tell everyone where they can find you and a little bit about your community or your course resources, options, what people can do to find more about what you do.
Yeah. Thank you for that opportunity. So first and foremost, we have our own podcast. It's called Lasting Impact Wellness, and it's available on Spotify and Apple and through our website as well. And our website is lastingimpactwellness.com. And my husband and I, we have a health coaching and consulting company where we meet with organizations about how to improve their well-being from leadership all the way through. And so we're really excited about the work that we do there. And you can go on the website and learn more about that. And a lot of the things that we talked about today in a little more detail, we have some podcast episodes about that stuff too. So but yeah, and we're always excited to talk to new people. So you can email us at info@lastingimpactwellness.com and we will certainly respond. So thanks again. Yeah, this was great, Emma. Thank you.
Cool. Yep, really appreciate you being here. So
yeah.
Okay, well, we'll talk to you again some other time, I hope.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool.